Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle with my friend Alfonso Rachel. This is the Virtue Signal, where we talk a little bit about the philosophy and the morality underneath the politics of the day and the year and the century and the millennium and all the rest of that stuff. Zoe, our topic today is fear. Fear. And what we're afraid of, what really scares us. And as I'm doing this introduction, I realize that my greatest fear is admitting what my fear is or fears are. You know what I mean? That's the thing that requires the most courage for me is to say, yeah, I'm afraid of this and I'm afraid of that. But putting aside whether it's something you should be afraid of or not, fear obviously can be our friends. There are things out there that you should be afraid of. And I don't want to get too much into the fact that a lot of people out there are frightened of things that they shouldn't be frightened of. But I do want to talk about things that people are afraid of in our society today, whether they should be afraid of them or not. Anything come to mind for you?
Well, this translates into a lot of things. I've spoken about this before. My biggest fear, like I said, is to be somebody that the Lord says he doesn't know. That's my biggest fear. Because we're talking about somebody who knows everything, right? And for him to say that I don't know you, if he says that I don't know you, it means because he doesn't want to. Right? It's like, I don't want to know you. He says that. It's like, I don't care that you were praying in my name. I don't care if you were casting out demons in my name. I don't know you, and I don't know where you came from.
He's never said that before to anybody, though, has he?
I hope not. Not that I know of. And I mean,
well, he's willing to make an exception in your case.
Right, exactly. It's like he's willing to make an exception. But I mean, in all seriousness, yeah. If he's brought destruction against these people, that means that they are people that he did not want to know, and he wiped them from the face of the earth. So it's kind of like one of those things where action speaks a lot louder than words.
Yeah, you bet.
But that would be my biggest fear, and that translates into a lot of things, because if I, whether it's in my own personal relationships, I want to be the type of person who has a walk that is pleasing to the Lord, because if it satisfies the Lord, chances are, and you can't please everybody, but chances are people are going to be okay with being around me. They may see me as somebody they can trust, say, hey man, you got something about you where it's like, I trust you. Because on my own merits, man, on my own attitude and all that sort of stuff, I'm a knucklehead, right? So if I try to walk in that, that things might not go as good. But in terms of like trying to be somebody that the Lord, be like, yeah, you all right. You all right. It's like, okay, chances are I might be all right with somebody else. And I try to translate in that to my personal relationships, my business relationships, how I vote. It's like I don't go into the voting booth or speak about policy based on my own ideas. I will contribute to things getting wrecked. But say, hey, Lord, how should I go about this policy? Look at the word of God squared up and how you preserve a society. Be like, okay, I'm going to vote down this line, or, this person is more squared up with my lines of representation and stuff, or what I've studied about what decent representation is. So, I go off of that. Really quick, you mentioned about, fear being useful. Sure, there's a practical sense of fear, even if it's an instance of, protecting your life, not just protecting your money, but protecting your life. We have baked into us, the fight or flight syndrome, right? And when you have that sense of fear, either way, it's for the effect of saving your life. Like, say, for instance, if you got to defend yourself, that fight or flight kicks in. Your pupils are gonna, they're gonna widen up so you could take in more light. Your nose is gonna start flaring so you could take in more air. You're gonna need that oxygen. Your skin's gonna tighten up. The blood is gonna drop beneath the surface. So if you get cut, you don't bleed as much. So these things are gonna take place and it's based on the introduction of fear. So you can protect yourself. Or if it's the flight syndrome, you're going to dump your waste so you can run faster, right? You don't want to have anything bogging you down. Dump the waste, dump the urine, dump the number two, and get easing on down the road, because you got to get out of Dodge, right? So fear, of course, in itself is a healthy thing. But being governed by fear, which is a lot of what we have right now, and there's plenty of blame to go around, from the people to the government. People say, hey, it's all the government's fault. It's still a government by the people. If the government is in there, that means that the people somewhere dropped the ball and let these people in there. So we can say all day that they cheated and they did it. It's like, how did these cheaters get past us? You know, if
That's
we're
right.
so smart and we were all woke and stuff like that, how did they get there? So there's some responsibility. Don't be afraid to take responsibility, okay? Not beat ourselves up, but pull ourselves up by our intellectual bootstraps and say, hey, okay, how did this happen? And we need to rework our strategy and not just blame somebody else, but take some introspection here.
You know, when I think about the things that I'm afraid of, I realize there's not a lot I'm afraid of. I know that sounds like just bragging, but it's pretty much true. I think the thing I'm probably most afraid of is I'm afraid that in an emergency situation, I'm going to chicken out. I'm afraid of being afraid when I need to be brave. I've had, and when I say this is the thing I comfort myself with the most, this is why I'm constantly reassuring myself, well, you've been through 3 single engine failures, you know, and single engine airplanes, and you did okay when this car overturned and all the rest of it. And I keep trying to comfort myself, because I don't want to be a hypocrite, and I don't want to be helpless when people need people to not be helpless. And I think the thing I'm most afraid of is turning out to be a coward when we don't need cowards, especially after all the talking I do about it. Hasn't happened yet, and I don't feel like it will, but that to me is the thing I think I really do personally fear. I fear. I fear. I would have a hard time facing myself. You know, if I were to bolt and run in a situation where somebody needed to not bolt and run.
I hear you, man. And you know, the thing is, that's one of that's a point that the Lord Himself drives home. He shows up. Take courage. You know, don't be afraid. Matter of fact, cowards is very detestable to God. And when He says that these will not inherit the kingdom, among those who do not inherit the kingdom, among the top of the list is cowards. And in saying courage, like say for instance with Peter, you know, we all know the story of Peter just running. Right? The Lord says, hey, man, you know, you're talking all this tough talk and stuff like that about where you're going to follow me and you're ready to die and all this sort of stuff. You're going to abandon me, dude. You're going to run, right? Before the rooster crows 3 times, you're going to deny me, right? So, but also what folks may need to understand is that Peter didn't just run because he was afraid. What Peter was afraid of was dying without a fight. That's what Peter was afraid of. Peter meant it. He said, look, man, I'm ready to go all the way with you. But when they came to arrest Jesus and Peter saw that, wait a minute, we're not going to fight. He was gone. He's like, I'm ready to die with you, man. I'll be taken capture. I'll be tortured. I don't care as long as I get to fight, right? I want to die fighting. And Jesus like, man, this isn't that kind of fight. Remember, man, I'm here to take on death. You know, the Rome, I understand, man, you want to take on Rome. That's going to come later. I'm here to take on something stronger than Rome. I'm here to take on the greatest enemy of them all. I'm here to take on death, right? So Jesus had to be courageous enough to be a lamb led to slaughter. So in that boldness, that's what actually makes him the lion. But even in America, we're afraid to be seen as sheep. One of the most detestable things that among people is to be seen as a sheep. We hear it all the time,
right.
A nation of sheep. And we see the narratives of a nation of sheep will be led by a government of wolves. I submit to the folks that the reason why we're being governed by wolves is because we're too proud to be sheep. That's why. I particularly don't like the idea of being a sheep, but I will be grateful to be a sheep in the Lord's flock. As the saying goes, I would rather be an army of sheep led by a lion rather than a bunch of lions being led by a lamb. The Lord, we have both. He was bold enough to say, give me your best shot. Is death the best you got? That's cute. All right. Yeah, I'll be right back.
Yeah, I think it was somebody said that about the British Army in World War I, that they were an army of lions led by jackasses. You know, the thing I think that's interesting when we talk about these things is not just to like observe them with the telescope, like, okay, there you are, and I'm afraid of this or afraid of that or whatever the case may be. It's also useful, I think, to talk about things that you can do about it. And I used to be much, much, much more afraid than I am now of virtually everything. And I realized that what I was doing, and a lot of people do this is essentially what worry is. But a lot of people who find themselves really kind of ruled by fear do it as a way of protecting themselves, they think. In other words, if you are married to a pilot, let's say, and every time he goes out the door, you're worried he's going to die in a plane crash. What you're doing, the mechanism is you're preparing yourself for the news that your husband died in a plane crash. All right, that's how it works. Living in constant worry and fear is a way that our minds assume will be the best way to mitigate shock. We just don't, we're so terrified of that moment that we kind of put ourselves through that moment all the time. But what that really ends up meaning is, honestly, it means that your husband dies every single day, as far as you're concerned, right? Every single day, as far as you're concerned, you're getting that news. And that news may never come. In fact, it almost certainly will not come. And even if it does come, it will come on that day. You can be happy between now and then. You can live without the fear of this between now and then. But we have a tendency, and I think it's growing, to grab onto the things that we're afraid of and kind of almost like embrace them and not let them go, because we don't want this thing to hit us full in the face. So we're going to live with it every day, and somehow that might mitigate the shock. But all it does is make you miserable all the time, which brings me back to this timeless adage, which is absolutely true. You know, it took me a while to figure it out, but a coward dies 1,000 times. A brave man only dies once. And the essence of that is that if you're afraid of dying every single day, then every single day is miserable. And if you're not, then when the day comes when you do have to die, you can be afraid then. And courage, like so many of the other virtues, is something that can not only be taught, it's something that can be exercised. And likewise, fear can be conquered. And one of the most effective ways to conquer a specific fear is through this treatment where, I forget the name of it right now, but basically, if you're afraid of spiders, the way to get over being afraid of spiders is to have somebody who knows what they're doing and bring a spider in a glass cage and put it across the room. And then after a little while, you get a little bit closer, and so on. And you begin to realize that what it is that you're afraid of is not actually the spider, it's something else. And you can recover from being afraid of any number of things. And this is the thing about fear is it's like, it's exactly as you mentioned, it's there to save our lives when we need it. It's there to get the blood flowing, get the adrenaline going, as you said, so eloquently, chuck the baggage overboard. and that's good. But we get so used to expecting that to happen that we end up living our lives in a state of fear. And I got one more thing to close with after this, but I want to hear what you have to say about that.
When people are given over to fear, you end up, a lot of times you end up hurting yourself more than the thing that you were afraid of. Right?
Exactly. And back, just real quick, back to the 12-step programs and stuff. Another thing that you would see on the wall all the time is fear stands for false expectations accepted as real. And most of the time, the things that we're so terrified of and that we're trying to protect ourselves with by constantly preparing for it, they never happen at all.
Right. And it's like, and just like, with the spider treatment, chances are if a spider lands on somebody, they are going to beat themselves up. They're going to beat their brains out trying to get that spider to do more damage to themselves than that spider was probably going to do. And, and sometimes fear can be, and trust me, I get it. Like I posed the question to folks sometimes asking the question of which would you rather be bitten by? Would you rather be bitten by a tarantula or would you rather be bitten by a Rottweiler? Which one, at the end of the day, which one is going to do more damage? Most likely the Rottweiler is going to do a lot more damage. But I think
most people would take the Rottweiler.
Most people, exactly. I am one of those. But like I said, but the thing about fear is that, hey, the thing that you're afraid of, it hurts, right? Chances are it's going to hurt either emotionally or physically, mentally. And people they don't want to experience that thing that's going to hurt them. And when people are living by that, or say for instance, like even right now, you have those who are afraid of the Rona and you have those who are afraid of losing the Republic, right? Both are not turning out well when you are given over to fear or motivated by fear. That's why, the Lord himself he constantly lets you know, look, I'm peace, man. And when I say I am peace, I understand that we're not talking about hippie Jesus here. He's actually pretty militant, but it's like, I'm not going to tell you to be given over to fear. Like I said, I repeat, even when I send my angels to you, what are they going to say to you? Don't be afraid. Right? It's like, don't fear. I know that I may be rather imposing and stuff like that. I know you ain't seen nothing like this before in this fashion, but don't be afraid, right? Get up, stand up, man. Don't be afraid. So that's really important to God, because as we see, when you are ruled by fear, and people, fear is like, that's sensationalism, man. That's big money. People will capitalize on people's fear, and they will build the fear, right? They will make a God out of their fears, right? And it's one, like God says, hey, don't have any other gods before me. Even if your God is fear, do not put it before me. Do not let anyone make you submit or bow down to this God called fear. I can give you enough reverential fear and healthy degree of fear to be afraid of. But when you fear other things, you will do things that will bring destruction to other people if you live by fear. And we're seeing that now. People's businesses, their lives, they're being destroyed based on fear.
Which brings me to the reason I wanted to take this subject in the first place today. The thing I'm most afraid of, aside from, circus carnies, is I'm afraid that everything that people lived and died to put into our hands is going fast. I'm afraid for the future of this country. I'm afraid of what is happening, and I'm especially afraid of how fast it's happening. And so I just wanted to close with this with you, Zoe. We've been talking about fear as this external presence, right? There's a bear out there, or there's a murderer in the closet, or whatever. There's a spider in the bathtub. It's an external thing. But one thing I think would do all of us well to keep in mind is the idea of fear as an actual weapon. As a weapon, not as an external thing that's just out there, I'm afraid of the sweet meteor of death or whatever. No, it's not just there. It's been put there, and it's been put there specifically to get a reaction from you. And it is being used as a weapon, which is to me why all of this stuff is so transparent. When you see things like the Hunter Biden laptop thing and the Hillary Clinton thing and the 2020 election and the COVID reaction, all of it, I often think that the reason that these things are so obviously evil and wrong and lies, I think the reason that they're so obvious is because it's intended to put us in this state of fear. And when we're constantly in fear, we're going to do one or two things. We're either going to fight or we're going to flee. And if we fight, they're trying to provoke a reaction that they can respond to, right? There's nothing they'd like better than to have a couple of white guys in a Donald Trump truck go down a street with a machine gun. That's their dream for them. And then the flee reaction is even worse, right? The fear can come on to the point when you say to yourself, and I dare anybody out there who's been watching these shows for a while to say that they haven't had this thought at least once or twice, especially this year, where you feel like there's nothing we can do about it. It's going, it's precious, it's being destroyed, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's over. It's over. It's gone. That is a mindset that comes from having fear being weaponized. And there are people out there who are very, very, very good at this. And these are the people that we're up against. And I personally, at the very least, I'm glad to see them out in the open. I'm glad to see them actually manufacturing their sausages and trying to sell them to people, because I know what's in them now. And I just thought I'd maybe just end up with that last take from you on that this idea that fear and terror can produce a helplessness, and that is in itself a weapon and a state that is artificially induced into the society in order to get us to behave either with resignation or with flight.
Absolutely, man. And just like you said, using the fear, using the slander. Who wants to be slandered? Once that accusation goes out there, it invokes fear. It's like, this is my reputation. This could be my business. This could be my livelihood. This could be my relationship and something like that. And Democrats indeed have weaponized these things. Like, as mentioned earlier, the charge of racism comes up. And once that comes up, that has lots of implications, and people respond in fear. I'm not a racist, right? Because you know what that means. And like I said, and I say this 1,000 times, and I got to keep saying it, because a lot of conservatives, they will say that, well, we already know about, Democrats did this, and Democrats were the Confederacy, and Democrats were, they were the party of Jim Crow, and they'll claim that they know that, but it's almost like, it's like training in martial arts, which I've taught for a long time. You see these instances of sometimes you can teach a person a technique, but when they're put to the test, their technique goes out the window. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with the talking points. Once that accusation comes thrown out, all of a sudden they forget who the Democrats were, right? And I can prove it, because once the charge of white privilege shows up, or once the charge of systemic racism, they'll say that there's no systemic racism. There's no white privilege. It's like, wait a minute. If you say that, then you just wiped the Democrats' slate clean. You gave them a free pass. That means that you really don't believe that the Democrats imposed Jim Crow. You really don't believe that the Democrats were the Confederacy. And then you wonder why
the Klan.
And the Klan, exactly. And then you wonder why people think the parties have switched sides. So don't wipe the Democrats' slate clean. Be brave. Be brave and just say, you know what? You're exactly right. There is systemic racism. There is white privilege, and we know exactly where it comes from. I'm not going to sit here and let you indict everybody who's white. But is there some truth to that? Yes. Let me point you to exactly where it is. That's you. The one making the accusation, the one making this projection, that's you. And anybody else listening, let's go ahead and let's run down the history of it and see where it comes from. So in that sense, it doesn't make the conservatives a wide open target. Don't get defensive about it, because this is what happens, Bill. When people respond out of fear, when this accusation comes toward them, their instinct is to do this, right? You see this a lot in the fight. A person starts covering up out of fear, and out of a wrong sense of defensiveness, they start trying to save their face, and they cover their face up. Well, what ends up happening is that you leave your torso wide open, and this person is destroying your body and your junk with body blows, reaching around there and hitting them kidneys until a person starts peeing red, white, and blue. You can go ahead and do that all you want to, but you're getting busted up. You can't throw your defenses out like that. So I'm just saying, when you respond out of fear, as we're talking about, it's not a good thing. Don't be afraid. Don't let these charges, or like I said, like even with the, it doesn't just turn into a racial accusation. Look at the orientation, sexual orientation, LGBTQ, because of the fear of being seen as homophobic and whatnot. And there's been people who've been saying, even the Republican camp, what's the big deal about, same-sex marriage and stuff like that? Love who you love, and it's all about freedom them and stuff like that. And I've been one of those guys saying, you don't want to go down that road. You don't want to go down that road. Do not make them put you in a position where you have to endorse this. Kindly, in love, just say, look, this will not work. You want to do you go ahead. Do not force me to endorse this. Do not try to propagandize me to endorsing this. Now, what's happened? Now we see it in the military. Yeah. Where people are having to be forced to capitulate these things, and policies concerning how our engagements are being determined by these things. I said years ago, and I'm not going to take the credit for it, the word of God said years ago, you don't want to go down this road. Speak truth in love, but do not let these people make you submit to their ideas and their perversions of nature and morality. Don't do it. It's going to lead to a very bad place. And unfortunately, we're seeing that unfold.
Weaponized fear looks like this, folks. The most fear-ridden places in America are America's inner cities, and the reason is a good reason, because they're the most dangerous places to be by a wide margin, an enormous margin. If you take the murder rate of the inner cities out of the American statistics as the country as a whole, we have a lower murder rate than Belgium, Switzerland, and all of it. Here's why I'm saying that. The people that live in these communities that are just terrorized constantly by human predators are afraid all the time. And even the predators are joining gangs because they're afraid. That's the reason why they join. And that's the reason why they puff themselves up and do all these things is because of the state of ambient fear is so high. And I bring all of this up only to say this. Weaponized fear means that you can have now 5, 6 generations of people living in conditions of intolerable fear. So why do they put up with it? Well, it's because the Democrats have managed to convince them that the only thing more terrifying than living in the living hell that they're living in would be voting for a Republican who wants to put them in chains or kill them or whatever. That's weaponized fear. You simply cannot imagine. I never cease to be amazed at how bad we are at messaging. But honestly, the answer to if you want to get urban voters, the way you get urban voters is to say, is this the best life you can imagine for yourself? Is it possible to imagine anything worse than this? You know, but no, that fear is very finely threaded in that particular case, and they've been sewing that tapestry for a long time. So these are the weapons that are out there, and that's why we do the show, which is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. And if you want to join the team, the highly specialized elite team of special idea inserted into behind enemy line. I'm just making an idiot out of myself. If you want to join up, you can do it at BillWhittle.com. Until next time, we'll see you right here on the Virtue Signal.